Kabeji. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tech Tamata, work with UNDP as a portfolio manager, and I'm very much happy to facilitate this session. Welcome to the distinguished panel members and all the participants. We have really prominent figures in the panel. Let me just introduce. We have Kausal sir from Prime Minister's office. He has been a joint secretary and he looks after human rights rule of law. We have Phanendra sir, Phanendra Gautam. He has been joint secretary for Ministry of Law and Justice. Now he has been a acting secretary as well, and he has extensive experience handling, looking after business and human rights area. And we have Bid Prasad Bhattarai. He has been Secretary General for National Human Rights Commission, and he has a comprehensive kind of knowledge on this area of intervention. And we have a few more with Kathmandu School of Law. Rabiji has a team, and they will also be presenting and launching a very remarkable comprehensive report that they have just produced for. And we have Nisha Bania, who has been the panel member for Labor Court as a judge. And we have Saroj Ghimire. He has been a professor and he has been very prominent lawyer working in the area of justice sector. Lasmi Madam, professor with Law College, and has been actively involved in business human rights. And she has also been involved in carrying out a lot of research in this area of intervention. And we have Bhakta Vishwakarma. He has been a chair of Nepal Dalit NGO Federation. Besides that, he has also been human rights lawyer, advocating and advancing this area of intervention. And we are very much pleased to see Surya Deva, the vice chair of UN Working Group on Business Human Rights Forum, and he has happily given consent to be part of this discussion, and we are very much excited to hear from his part as well. So talking about the sessions, we have like 3 segments of this session, and we'll be hearing the remarks from distinguished panel members first, and in between we'll be launching a comprehensive report on laws so far in Nepal in relation to business human rights. And besides that, we'll continue the discussion. As I said, we have prominent figures from diverse part of government. And in addition to that, we'll have group discussion, and finally we'll come up with few of the comprehensive recommendations to advance the business and human rights area. So we'll be discussing mainly on 2-3 areas. The first areas would be so far our initiatives from different part of our governance system, the issues, challenges, bottlenecks in this area, and of course way forward. So without further delay, let me request Kausal sir to lead a session to make a remark, and while doing so, it would be good that he would focus more on the initiative so far that government of Nepal has taken towards advancing business human rights area. Secondly, the issues and challenges, bottlenecks, and thirdly, we also wanted to know whether the government of Nepal is interested to really embark on developing dedicated plan of action on business and human rights. Over to you, Kausal sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Teksha. Namaste. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear.
Yes.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you all from Kathmandu. Organizers, the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, UNDP and ILO, Professor Surya Deva, Livio Sarandera, and all other friends who are joining to this virtual meeting. Greetings from Kathmandu. Thank you, organizers, for inviting me to share few words that Nepal so far has made in realizing the human rights, realizing the guiding principles on business and human rights in Nepal. We have very few things to share such in this forum. Last year we were prepared to host the second South Asian Forum on Business and Human Rights, but the COVID required us to postpone the meeting, and this year we are meeting through the virtual means. Probably the next year we will be able to meet in person. Talking about the business and human rights, we know the globalization in the world, most of the functions are carried out by the business sector. The role of the government are being limited since the business sectors are carrying out most of the traditional functions that were carried out by the states are carried out by the business sector. Therefore, the state responsibility towards the human rights, respect, protect, fulfillment obligations now, in that proportion, the responsibility is being shifted as the role of the state is shifted to the business community. In that proportion, the role of the business community towards protection, respecting, and the remedying the human rights framework are also shifted to the business community. Now the production to distribution of the goods and services, all forms of production and distribution of the goods and services are made by the private sectors. Therefore, they have to comply the human rights responsibilities that traditionally they were borne by the states. However, the role of role of states will remain the same. Now, having these two words, in terms of Nepal, how we are realizing this framework is that we all know the 2015 Constitution has elaborated all the international human rights instruments that Nepal is party. Nepal is party to 7 core human rights conventions and 11 ILO related conventions. Moreover, we are party to so many environment related conventions as well. Therefore, most of these obligations emanated from those conventions are incorporated in the 2015 Constitution, and the Constitution criminalizes and prohibits, penalizes the discrimination on the ground, any form of discrimination, and if anyone is victimized, the compensation is also ensured by the Constitution itself. Right to decent work is ensured, forced labor is prohibited, and if anyone is forced to such of harmful practices or the labor force, such a person is ensured compensation. Similarly, right to clean environment is ensured, and if anyone pollutes the environment, he or she, the polluter is liable to be punishable, and the victim is entitled to have a compensation. Similarly, the consumers' rights are also incorporated as the fundamental rights. The producers, distributors are liable for their default goods or services, and the victim is entitled to get compensation. All these norms that are the concern of the human rights are ensured by the Constitution, and the relevant legislations have already been framed and are being implemented, so that the normative framework and the institutional framework for the realization of these rights are incorporated in our Constitution and the legislations. Similarly, in case of violations, remedies are also available from the regular courts as well as the specialized courts. And we have the human rights, NHRI's, National Human Rights Institutions. They exercise the quasi-judicial body authorities, and they have also power to ensure remedy in case of the victims. This framework make liable to the business community also. This is not on the part of the state, but also equally liable to the business community. So that the normative framework and the institutional mechanisms that commensurate with the spirit of the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. However, in practice, there are some problems. Obviously, a business community would like to make a profit immediately, and to some extent, they want to undermine the legislative framework and wanted to get benefits. Similarly, the governments of the least developed countries like Nepal intend to have overnight development, and sometimes they overlook to monitor the violations of such practices made by the businesses, contractors, or builders, and they intend to get benefits, so that the vigilance of the watchdog machineries and the regulatory mechanism is to be made consistently. Most of the business communities are not aware about their responsibilities as well. They don't know they have the human rights obligations they have to fulfill. So that the ardent and important responsibility lies on us, that the human rights responsibility is on the business community as well, and they have to discharge these responsibilities in relation to their business and to the extent of the violation of human rights, so that to protect, respect, and remedy framework of the UN guiding principles are to be made aware to the business communities. That's most important as we are thinking and pursuing ahead.
Sir, छोटे होने वाला है, please.
Just 2 minutes. Taking into this account of this situation, the government of Nepal last year on 12 October 2020 adopted the 5th National Human Rights Action Plan. The 5th National Human Rights Action Plan has an explicit activity to which states that the Ministry of Labor and Employment will frame an action plan based on the guiding principles on business and human rights, so that within 2 years, we hope we will have a separate action plan dedicated dedicated on the business and human rights, so that we have 2 rounds of meeting with the Ministry of Labor and Employment to this matter, to how to frame that action plan, so that we hope we will be able to bring that action plan within 2 years, and we will go on the basis of that action plan. We will move ahead. That's our progress, and we intend to go ahead. Thank you very much once again for inviting me to speak few words on business and human rights that we have worked so far. Thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Kausal sir, for your key highlights about your work, about the issue challenges, and at the same time, few kind of way forward that you are thinking of, and we are delighted to note that you are planning to have a dedicated kind of plan of action on this area of intervention. Thank you very much again. So now let me welcome Anusha Kharel. She has been working with Kathmandu School of Law. As I said before, I'm very much pleased to inform you that Kathmandu School of Law has already carried out a study, a comprehensive study on existing laws in relation to business and human rights in Nepal. And I would, like to request Ms. Kharel and Pranjali Cornell to make a brief presentation on it. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anusha Kharel. I am a research assistant at Kathmandu School of Law. Before starting with the presentation, I would like to thank Teck sir from UNDP Nepal and the UNDP Regional Office Bangkok for providing us with the opportunity to e-launch our handbook on existing legal framework of business and human rights in Nepal in this esteemed platform. The handbook is a part of the research project granted by Kathmandu School of Law to its Business Law and Arbitration Research Center BLARC in 2019 and is published by Kathmandu School of Law, Nepal. It identifies the national laws that have sufficient scope to link them to human rights obligations and examines the existing laws according to the three pillars of United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, UNGPs, endorsed by the UN Human Rights Council in 2011. It does not make any suggestions on the amendment of laws or the establishment of new institutions. It is strictly limited to an overview of the existing laws to open up space for further steps towards interconnecting business and human rights. The business and human rights discourse as a cross-cutting field gained momentum after the endorsement of the UNGPs. The government of Nepal is considering including sections on business and human rights in the National Action Plans on Human Rights. There are business laws that regulate the activities of business entities. However, business enterprises are not strictly bound by human rights obligations. The handbook has been prepared as an attempt to identifying the existing legal framework on business and human rights in Nepal and fill the gap that exists on this subject. We are planning the next step to examine the laws in the backdrop of UNGPs and suggest a national action plan on business and human rights that would be a guideline for the state, business enterprises, and other stakeholders to follow in order to interconnect business and human rights. The research for the handbook is based primarily on the three pillars of the UNGPs. Regarding the first principle of the UNGPs, the state duty to protect, we found that there is no explicit law that governs the operation of business enterprises in Nepal. The business entities are governed by regulatory provisions that oblige them to follow and protect human rights. According to the Treaty Act of Nepal 1990, the treaty to which Nepal is a party is enforceable as good as the domestic laws. In the absence of a binding treaty to regulate business enterprises under international human rights law, Nepal needs to follow its obligations under different international treaties that may or may not incorporate the elements of business and human rights together. Nepal's domestication of these ratified treaties is an important step towards fulfilling its obligations concerning business and human rights. The handbook explains the domestication of the international human rights treaties to which Nepal is a party. It also provides a detailed picture of all the domestic laws that deal with the issues of business and human rights in one way or the other. Moving forward to the second pillar of UNGPs, Nepal has candidly codified several legislations grounded on international standards that recognize the corporate responsibility to respect human rights. Although no explicit legal framework guaranteeing human rights obligations of business enterprises has been developed, several legal provisions obliging business enterprises to be responsible towards human rights can be traced in scattered legislations. The regulatory mechanisms such as the Commission of Environmental Impact Assessment, initial environmental examinations, brief environment study in matters concerning the environment, the corporate social responsibility, consumer protection, labor standards at workplace, etc., ensure that business enterprises address their responsibility towards protection and promotion of human rights. The handbook explains in detail the provisions of various acts and rules dealing with the corporate responsibility to respect human rights. We have tried to incorporate the acts and legislations, rules that deal with the business and human rights, the regulation of business enterprises in Nepal. To deal with the third pillar, the access to remedy, and conclude the presentation, I would like to call upon my colleague, Ms. Pranjali Kanel, who is also a research assistant at Kathmandu School of Law. Thank you.
Pranjali, over to you. Are you there? Pranjali ji?
I think Pranjali cannot unmute herself.
Okay. Maybe Kavya ji, could you please assist her?
Thank you so much. While we're at the third pillar, that is access to remedy, we're talking about the need to ensure access to justice for those who are deprived of their human rights. And the study that we've done, which has been incorporated into a book, what we've done is we have a separate chapter in the book which specifically deals with access to remedy. And the separate chapter discusses about the Nepalese legal framework regarding the human rights abuses related to businesses. As regards the Nepalese legal system, the framework as a whole does not provide for a specific legislation. Rather, it has the provisions to look into human rights abuses related to businesses per se in a scattered form through various different yet specific legislation such as the Bank and Financial Institution Act, Industrial Enterprises Act, and Company Act. These are some of the acts that have been incorporated. Cases relating to these acts and the provisions have been dealt in the study, which, as we've suggested, has been incorporated into the book. And the other aspect of the access to remedy falls within the realm of judicial mechanisms or the enforcement agencies that allow the implementation as well as the monitoring of the uh, implementation of the legal mechanism that we just mentioned, wherein Nepal's framework, those frameworks are rather scattered than having a concentrated one. Enforcement agencies such as the judicial mechanism, the quasi-judicial bodies, the local judicial bodies, as well as NHRIs in Nepal, they have played and they will continue to play an important role in ensuring access to remedy. As regards judicial mechanism, the Nepalese court system is a three-tier court system with Supreme Court, High Court, and the District Court. The Supreme Court primarily it looks after the cases, also the wreaths, and is also the court of record in Nepal. And with the presence of Supreme Court as the court of record in presence of a commercial bench, which is provisioned by the Company Act, and the presence of specialized courts such as labor court, these mechanisms actually ensure in the access of remedy related to certain violations or the abuses that the business enterprises might come up with. As regards the quasi-judicial bodies, the local...
Yeah,
Thank you so much, sir. Local judicial bodies, we have them playing a very important role in access to remedy. Moving forward, the way forward with the study, for a country like Nepal, which actually needs to explore or into the law beyond addressing only popular concerns, we, through this study and through this handbook, we propose small yet substantial changes and not radical changes. We want changes to come forth in a very positive manner where we can propose and propel substantial changes in the future. And these are the ideas, these are the core themes that we've incorporated through our studies and into a book now. I'd like to hand over the floor to Ravi to take the concept of the study further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pranjali. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to do this and to present our basic findings. And as Anush and Pranjali initially said, we just tried to identify the existing laws in the country as of now, and we propose a further study in future as well. In those lights, I would also like to thank Professor Surya to have kindly looked at the study and provided us a forward. And I would give the floor to him to say a few words and launch the ebook. Unfortunately, Professor Sangrola, who was the first person to guide us to start this study, is not available today with us. But then I would just request Professor Surya to launch the book and provide a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji, and I would also like to say a very good morning to Mr. Gautamji, Mr. Subediji, Mr. Bhattaraji, and all the friends from Nepal who are joining this session. So thank you very much for coming together to push the business and human rights agenda in Nepal in collaboration with the working group, UNDP, ILO, and other partners. So this is definitely very important initiative. I'm also very pleased that the researchers in Nepal are doing more research at the national level in business and human rights. And this book is a tangible evidence of this research. And I hope researchers in other countries in South Asia and Global South generally will pay greater attention to teaching and researching on business and human rights issues, because those issues are going to become very critical for each and every country in the world. I will just make 2 points. My first point is that the Global South scholars and activists and the governments and businesses, they should be more proactive going forward. We should not adopt a merely a recipient approach, that the standards are going to be created in the global north, and our role is merely to implement those business and human rights standards and norms. Rather, our role is also to create standards that are suitable for the local needs in the global south. I mean, that is my first suggestion going forward. The second point is we should not see business and human rights as equal to UN guiding principles. UN guiding principles, of course, are the first authoritative source, but how they interplay with the domestic rules, how do they interplay with other international standards, is something worth exploring further. And I think this study tries to do that in situating UN guiding principles in the context of the domestic legal framework in terms of the other international instruments that Nepal has ratified. I think this is absolutely vital. My last point is that we should also explore how indigenous ideas in the global south or in South Asia could be harnessed to promote the business and human rights agenda. I think public interest litigation, which is mentioned in the book, is one key example of it. Like this public interest litigation is not there in many other parts of the global north. So we should make use of public interest litigation, which is very prominent in South Asia, including in Nepal, to promote business respect for human rights. In my opening remarks, I also mentioned about gram panchayats. How could the small village panchayats can play a proactive role in promoting business and human rights agenda? So I think with these remarks, I would like to congratulate once again Ravi and all his team to do this book. And hereby, I'm pleased to e-launch the book. And I very much hope that researchers in Nepal and outside will read the book and do more work in future. Thank you very much once again.
Abhyaji? Yeah.
All right, so here we see the e-copy of the book. So once again, congratulations to the authors, and it's my pleasure to e-launch the book. And if it is possible to download it or purchase it, so I think if you can share the information in chat box, that will also be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Back to you, Ravi, or Tak. I don't know who would like to take it over from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Surya and KSL team for launching a very important kind of report. And I would also like to thank Surya for your very good remarks, and particularly the highlights regarding use of indigenous practices, indigenous tools and frameworks to advance this idea, and more importantly the strategic litigation. We have very good examples already shared in this regard as well. Thank you very much once again. And now moving ahead, let me request Phanendra Gautam sir. As I already introduced him, he has been very active, joint secretary in Ministry of Law and Justice, and as a national project director of Access to Justice project, which is a joint venture between UNDP and the Ministry of Law and Justice. He has been involved in taking this agenda very actively. So over to you, Faranda sir. For you, there are 2-3 kind of areas for your remark. The first one is, of course, about your initiative so far embarked on in the area of business human rights. The second one would be about the rapid assessment that you have carried out in partnership with FNCCI on due diligence during pandemic. So the use of it and the way forward, for its implementation. And thirdly, your role in relation to the implementation of dedicated plan of action that Prime Minister's office is thinking of to, go for. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tekji. Distinguished Professor Suryadeva and Libyu and all distinguished ladies and gentlemen joined here today. First of all, I thank you, UNDP, for providing me the forum to be before you with some sharing of information, sharing of some ideas and future way in relation to business and human rights in Nepal. Kaushalji from the Office of Prime Ministers and Council of Ministers has already pointed out about the Human Rights Action Plan. One of the critical areas of core areas of the Human Rights Action Plan is labor, employment, and social securities, within which the Human Rights Action Plan has clearly spelled out the need to develop a separate national action plan on business and human rights for Nepal. So this shows the urgency of the matter while talking about business and human rights in Nepal. So we at the Ministry of Law and Justice have been active in sensitizing relevant stakeholders, especially business community, on the basic principle of the UN guidelines. We have made them aware about the 3 pillars which already talk about: the state responsibility to protect, business responsibility, corporate responsibility to respect, and responsibility of the both actor to provide remedy. So from this perspective, we have conducted series of dialogue at provincial level under the garb of this, under the support of the this project, access to justice through institutional reform, which we are doing with UNDP Nepal. And so many issues have come up. Business communities share a paramount concern that are these guiding principles directly related to us, or these are something to be complied with by only by the transnational business communities only. So we have tried our best to make them aware that though primarily it was intended to the transnational companies, but nonetheless we at the national level also have the responsibility respect, protect, and provide remedy, and we have to comply with all the things. And we have been engaged in making them aware about their role, responsibility, and right also. About during the COVID pandemic, under the support of the project, we have conducted a rapid assessment on human rights due diligence by the business community. And there were 8 critical areas covered by the study. One was occupational health and safety. Second, labor right. Third was environmental and community impact. Fourth one was safeguarding privacy. Next one was preventing discrimination and next one was corporate policy and considerations, gender and social inclusion, and lastly, coordination with government and other stakeholders. And we have found some mixed type of responses. The findings of the study was that even during pandemic, protection of privacy rights of persons and compliance of social inclusions are the area where corporate houses or business communities were doing well. And another very interesting finding is that even during the pandemic, the industrial release, the labor release enterprises intact. There was no that kind of conflict. Both sides work together to come up with the crisis. There are some findings which require immediate interventions by the government, by the business community themselves, by the trade union, civil society, and people in general also. So some of the major concerns are that 33% of the business enterprises said that they did not provide safety materials such as masks and sanitizers and other essential services to workers. And another is that of pregnant women and people with disability at work protected very well. This is also one of the areas of grave concern for us. Another one is that 69% of enterprise
I can't hear him. Maybe Kabeji.
It seems like Paninderji has just been disconnected.
Okay, maybe we have to move ahead, no? Because he was almost concluded. So sorry that his internet disconnected. Thank you very much, Fernando sir, for his remarks and highlights in the areas that they have been intervening, and more importantly, the key highlights of the rapid assessment, which was carried out by Ministry of Land Justice in partnership with FNCCI. Thank you once again. Pardon, sir. Thank you. Welcome back, sir.
There was a sudden interruption.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
Sorry.
Please
move ahead. Sorry.
It happens. And another alarming point was that around 70% of enterprises were in favor of retrenchment because the revenue earnings was lessening. So they are in not favor of continuing the workforce, the business in the usual volume or size. And they frankly share their concerns that it was they could not address all the labor law requirements, including the principle of business and human rights, because of financial crisis they are having. And after these findings, the study has made some concrete recommendations to the government, to the business community, and to trade union also, and civil society. In case of government, the study has clearly pointed out that government need to implement labor law fully, develop special protocols and procedures on occupational health and safety, and government need to enhance labor inspection, and it needs to develop procedures for labor audit system, and it need to provide loan and subsidy and give tax rebate to business enterprises so that they easily absorb the shock posed by the pandemic. And in case of business community also, the study has uh, provided some concrete recommendations, including developing occupational health and safety policy within each enterprise, develop a labor audit system, enhance social dialogue system, protect right of person in special needs, including women and people with disability, and provide basic health and safety materials to the workforce engage with them. And in case of trade union and civil society, the study has pointed out the need to raise awareness and facilitate the dialogue between on all the principles of the business and human right um, guidelines, and develop capacity at all front. And after this study, we have now have the thinking to continue the efforts of implementing the recommendations of the study by mainstreaming business and human rights principles through interagency coordination at
Hello, Fanal sir. I can't hear you. Kabeji?
Yes, there seems to be an issue with Phanindra Sar's.
Yeah,
all
maybe,
level.
okay. So Fanal sir, I was talking about yeah.
Yes, yes. And we are also thinking to inject ideas of responding to these principles while making the law reform process. And on this specific plan of action in business human right, we work in close contact with Ministry of Labor, Employment and Social Security, and this is how we plan to move ahead. I thank you once again for providing me the opportunity. Thank you. Over to you, Tekji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Faran sir, highlighting the key kind of initiatives, and more importantly, your active engagement in terms of implementation of the rapid assessment that you have mentioned for. Thank you once again. Now we have Bes sir, the Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Bes sir, for you, we have two major questions, Bes sir. The first one, Bes sir,
yes,
first one would be, yeah, for your remarks, there are two questions. The first one would be, share your interventions on behalf of NHRIs in response to, again, protection, promotion, respect of business human rights. That's one thing. The second thing is, what will be the key priorities for future, again, to promote, responsible business practices. Thank you very much. For you, 4 minutes, Roger, please.
Thank you, Tech sir. I'll try to explain from my point. And good morning, everybody. Surya, Livio, and friends from Nepal. Thank you very much for giving opportunity to explain what NHRC Nepal is doing with regard to the business and human right in Nepal. As our regular business is that we are receiving the complaints on business and human right, and monitoring and investigating on these issues. Besides that, we are also advocating for the human right, business and human right issues, and we have advocated for the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of the Migrant Workers by the government, and we have done few dialogue with FNCCI, government officials, and human rights defenders in Nepal. And major thing is that the Commission has incorporated the business and human rights issue in its fifth sixth strategic plan. And we are also, I think, going to incorporate in our sixth strategic plan the major issue of the business and the human rights. And with regard to the partnership on this issue, we have done MOU for the protection and promotion of the rights of the migrant workers with the NHRC Qatar and NHRC South Korea, and recently we have done MOU with the SWACAM, the NHRC of Malaysia. Like this, we are also collaborating with the civil society organizations on the issue of migrant workers and rights of the indigenous peoples for making awareness and monitoring issues. While we are talking about the intervention, we have done so many monitoring and investigation, and we have recommended Nepal government for the compensation and the action towards the perpetrators. Few of the examples, one is the a massive disturbance by house flies due to a poultry farm in Biratnagar. We have intervened in this issue. Recently, an woman has been killed during the road extension by a contractor, and NHRC intervened in this issue and make sure about the compensation. Next is a case that was in Janakpur, cartelling of medicine by the medical distributors. Another intervention of the NHRC Nepal, a security guard in a business house was deployed in a machine room as a machine boy. He fell into an accident, and NHRC investigated the issue and made compensation from the business sector in Biratnagar. There are so many intervention issues. Besides that, NHRC Nepal has released white paper on the status of human rights situation due to the economic blockade of India to Nepal in 2015-16 for 6 months. We have also issued the white paper at that time, and we are regularly monitoring the consumers' human right, labor right, and ILO 169 issues. During the COVID-19, we have also monitored the issues of big media houses and employment issue of the journalists during the COVID-19. And we have also some experience with regard to the mediation. In 220 kV Khimti hydropower project, there was a big issue, it was a big national issue, an engineer issue of indigenous people, and they were in a struggle. NHRC mediated in the issue with the Nepal government and the indigenous people community at that time also. Besides that, the commission has also mediated in the issue of private boarding school association and the teachers unions demands in the regional level also. Likewise, we have few plan and policy interventions also, and we have recommended Nepal government to protect economic, social, cultural rights and right to life of the migrant workers, including indigenous peoples residing in the buffer area of the national park, like in Bardia, Dorpatan, and Kosara. And we have also not to displace indigenous people due to road extension or fast track roads in Kathmandu Valley and the other side of the country. And we have also produced consumers' rights monitoring guideline, and we are monitoring on the basis of the guidelines with regard to the consumers' rights, which was produced in 2011 by the Commission. And we have also recommended Nepal government to incorporate the issue of business and human rights in its national human right, 5th National Human Rights Action Plan of the government. The government has recently incorporated the issue of business and human rights, and they have a good plan for the protection and promotion of business and human rights issues in the country. As text is said that with regard to the key priorities of the Commission, as I have already mentioned that in our 6th strategic plan, which is going to be prepared very, very soon, we have given a high priority for the business and human rights sectors. And NHRC will continue the monitoring and investigation issues of the business and human rights. And NHRC will also focus on raising awareness and advocacy programs to the business sector and to the government sector. The Commission will also collaborate with the FNCCI in federal level and district level as well, and with other civil society organizations and professional organizations in coming future. NHRC will strengthen its coordination and collaboration with the other thematic human rights commission, which has been recently established and which are now in functioning. And next week, we are going to actually interact with all these human rights thematic commission, all 8 commissions. And actually, the commission will prioritize its research works on business and human rights. As you know, there are many human rights violation issues in the country related with the business sector. The NHRC, as a watchdog of the human rights, it is doing its regular business and receiving complaints and monitoring the issues and investigating and intervening in the issues. In many cases, we have got success, and government has responded positively in these issues. Thank you very much. Thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, best sir, highlighting all the diverse interventions that you have been kind of, responding through your using your, like competitive advantage. Thank you very much once again.
Thank
now
you,
we have
thank you. Namaste.
yeah, namaste, sir. So now we have Nisha Bania, the judge for labor court. And Nisha, madam, would you please highlight, two key things during your remarks. The first one, is about your experiences as a panel member of labor court and the initiatives so far taken in handling the cases in relation to labor rights and migrant workers' right, of course. And the second one would be, what are the key issues and challenges that you have been witnessing, while kind of handling these issues. Thank you very much, Nisha madam. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me in the program. And Mr. Surya Deva and other friends from Nepal and from UNDP, ILO and all. My regards to all of you. Actually, it's sharing my experience. I was appointed on 15th October 2020. It's just 6 months running now. So it is a newly formed. It's as equivalent as High Court is Labor Court now. Before it was established, but it was not in that level. Now it's we are 3 judges appointed there. So we are also handling. We are also the member of Tribunal, Labor Tribunal, Foreign Employment Tribunal. So we are linking our position in 2 organizations, Labor Court and Foreign Employment Tribunal. One of the member represents there. So to share my experience, I'm feeling very much responsible. Actually, it is the position of before that I was in trade union also, and I was working with civil societies and working with the government agencies as well. But now this is a different type of responsibility, and I have to be very careful or I have lots of rule and regulation and code of conduct like that. So initially I was not very comfortable with the position, but now with the responsibility, whatever I have received or given to me is very much important while we see the cases, and it's to use my personal experience in my judgment. So I feel very good to take this responsibility, and I would like to thank and even all of my colleagues who took care of me, as well as the government and the judiciaries. So when we went there, it was the pandemic time. And very severe. The court was not open for a long time, so so we started to handle the cases immediately after our appointments. we received, the numbers of cases are increasing now. Now we have 275 cases. Before it was like 150 or around. And we have settled 57 cases till now during this period. And the nature of cases, we are receiving that termination in several grounds, including COVID crisis, redundancy, retrenchment, occupational health and safeties, minimum wage issues, trade union issues, collective bargaining, discrimination in wages and workplace, implementation of labor law. I mean, some of the employer, they are not even ready to implement labor law and social security law as well. And the other outsourcing workers disputes and severance payment, compensation, and also we receive multinational companies' responsibilities, which is closely related to due diligence and value chain issue of our topic. And then other issues are compensation. And in tribunal courts, we have received fraud cases, fake documents, and issues of compensation, criminal punishment, like that. So we have received several types of cases in tribunal court, in labor court. And we are trying to address the international instrument, including ILO, International Labor Standards. In some issues, which cases we have finalized, we have already mentioned about the C98, which is related to right to organize and collective bargaining convention. The party, Nepal is the party of that as well. The redundancy issue, we have cited the issue of, cited the international convention, ILS C158, termination of employment convention, that also we have cited. And the collective bargaining again, and for outsourcing companies, the provision of C181, which has mentioned the responsibility of outsourcing companies. This is newly in new labor law, that is the new provision of outsourcing companies. So we have to cite the international standards as well as human rights standards in our judgments. So international standards, some of them are directly applicable. Okay, fine. Yeah, I will. Directly applicable, and some of them are not directly applicable. We just take reference to interpret our judgment. So in this way, we are using this. We are doing our regular work now. So for the working women's issue, is you mentioned for me to speak out, that minimum wages, discrimination is in workplace, work-life balance, like see Convention 156, that because now 33% reservation makes women to come out from home, but the stress level and responsibility is very high, so that issue is not addressed very clearly in our legal provisions. And agriculture women, farmer, they are working in informal sectors. That is also not clearly mentioned, and that is also not included in social security scheme. Domestic workers and trafficking, migrant workers issue, which talking about migrant workers is women issues. That is a problem, like it's sometimes ban or sometimes something protection, or sometimes being pregnant or harassment, something like that. So this is also one of the major challenge now. Workplace harassment, now in Nepal, we are talking about 190, ILO 190, that is in discussion. We have law, but we need to address in line with the our law has need to amend in line with the international convention, I mean 190. And another issue we don't clearly mention in our law, that value chain and due diligence for the stated issues. So and our issue right now, our issue is that labor court is a very specialized court, but it is always like labor or minor court like that. It is treated like that. It was treated like that, but now we are trying to strengthen and enhancement our capacity, and we hope that government will support for this also. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nisha Bania, and your highlights in regards to issue challenges that you have been witnessing, and more importantly, we have to appreciate your attempt to make sure that human rights standards are well captured, coming to the judgment. So now we have Bhaktaji. Bhaktaji, since you have been working closely with marginalized groups for their rights, could you please highlight the issues and challenges, or say whether the vulnerability is well mainstreamed while looking into BHR agenda? That's one thing. The second thing is, how can we ensure the discourse on business human rights is equally informed by marginalized communities in Nepal? Bhakta sir, over to you. Bhakta sir, can you hear me? Hello?
Thank you, Tech sir. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So respected all the dignitaries, especially the Surya Deva and all officials and distinguished panelists. It is my immense pleasure to share this panel because this is the key issues for Dalit communities in Nepal. The Dalit communities have been treated as a labor class, both formal and informal sectors. Before these issues, the issues of business and human rights become very crucial. However, the issues has not been dedicatedly discussed among the Dalit civil society organization, but the issues of marginalization, exclusion, and discrimination is rampant for Dalit communities. The workers are facing enormous challenges and exploitation, including long working hours, very low wages, and untimely pay, and lack of jobs and social security provision, including the safety measures. In addition, they are experiencing a lot of humiliations because of using of derogatory languages in the workplace and discrimination based on caste. Caste-based discrimination and the untouchability directly relate to the inherited hierarchical and the inherited allocation of jobs, by which Dalit are assigned the most menial and dirty jobs with the lowest status. The caste-based occupation has been allocated not to informal sector, but also the practice have observed in the corporate and government sector as well. I think Dalit and the marginalized people are often exploited in foreign migration as well, and they have to pay a high amount of money to get the low wages, unskilled jobs. They are deprived of basic rights, including fair pay, long working hours without overtime pay, adequate accommodation, and social securities. Those who are engaged in the labor market of India are largely from Dalit communities. A survey conducted by DCA on the impact of COVID-19 on migrant workers in Sudur Paschim province showed that 46% of those returning after losing their jobs were from Dalit communities. Another survey conducted by DNF revealed that 66% Dalits were directly wage earners, and 77 of them lost their job during the lockdown periods. So most of the Dalits are engaging in informal sectors such as Halia, Baligare, Kholo, Harua, and Charua system, which are the different form of modern slavery. The Halia, of which 97% are the from Dalit community were emancipated 14 years back, but they are still wait for the proper rehabilitation by the state. Anti-Slavery International estimate that 80 to 89% of bonded labor in Nepal, India, and Pakistan are from Dalit and or indigenous people. So this type of labor class, they are facing a lot of problem in Nepal. Moreover, like facing multiple forms of discrimination, hardship, and violence, such as caste-based massacre at Rukum, custodial death at Janakpur, Rohtat, and Kailali, death after rape, Angira Pasi, Bhimkumari BK, and other Dalit girls, including various forms of caste, gender-based violence, are the challenging peace, security, and justice. We have engaged fact-finding, monitoring, and advocating for the better address and better access to the justice for those cases, but which is very challenging for us to provide justice to them. And the challenge is obviously the lack of information, especially for the business and human rights issues, the lack of information and capacity for undertaking business and human rights issues is the major challenge for Dalits and marginalized people. Moreover, absence of dedicated law and the policies, as well as effective implementation and collective bargaining, are the hindering factor for applying human rights in businesses. Like a way forward, I think I have to highlight some key issues like awareness raising the awarenesses and building the capacity for the Dalit community and the marginal community is the major area to be engaged in the future, and organize a series of discussion, dialogue, and the interaction involving multi-stakeholders, including Dalit CSO and the businesses also need to take and conduct research, assessment, and analysis to maintain disaggregated information in regards to caste-based discrimination perspective in the businesses, and make a provision for protecting the rights of migrant workers and the workers in the informal sectors. The key national and international businesses and trade-related networks have to be sensitized to the extension of caste-related exploitations. So final word is zero tolerance policies and against caste-based discrimination and the establishment of separate desks at the businesses and companies need to be established for taking care of those issues. And the final one is the fundamental rights and the rights related to the labor need to be effectively implemented in the days to come for addressing the issue of Dalit. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhakta sir, for your well captured recommendations and the issues that you have highlighted in relation to many forms of discrimination that marginalized communities have still been encountering with. Thank you once again. Now, may I request Lasmi Sharma, the professor of Nepal Law College, to highlight two things. The first thing is about your experiences in regards to introducing a dedicated curricula on business human rights in TU, Tribhuvan University. That's one thing. Second thing is about your thoughts regarding role of the academia in strengthening again this important agenda of business human rights. Over to you, Lasmi madam.
Yes,
floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Dick sir, and good morning to all of you. We have several, as we have going to discuss on the role of the academia and the business and human rights curriculum. Before introducing the specific course as a business and human rights, we have this course in the scattered form in different subjects like of the commercial law, human rights, and so on. Later on, what we have realized is that after coming that the UN guidelines and the need of the business and human rights and becoming one of the more challenged in context to Nepal as it's a developing countries and many more issues are evolving. So as it has to be addressed, so with the cooperations and initiations taken by the Tribhuvan University Faculty of Law, we have designed the business and human rights. So if the virtual floor permit me, I'm able to share that curriculum also over here. So in this context, this course is particularly designed for as a non-credit course for the very beginning, and it contains of for the 12 weeks and 48 hours. So in the beginning, what we have planned is to do as a non-credit course. Later on, as a specialized course, we are going to introduce as a faculty course in upcoming days. So in this context, the outline particularly designed for dealing with the major substantive issues and the conceptual issues and business and human rights, such as that the corporate social responsibilities versus business and human rights, which are very pertinent issues and needs a rigorous discourse on it. And similarly, sustainable development goal versus business and human rights, which is also becoming an indebatable or inconclusive debate on it, because of from the different perspectives and school of thought. And also the rights and duties of the business of business enterprises as third party. And also the international financial institutions, we shall be discussed in different discourse, whether that is of the labor rights or the entrepreneur rights, consumer rights, and also the protections and intervention role of the government. So with this context, the students definitely what we have expect that they will explore to different perspectives, and school of thoughts will be developed and help in the upcoming days to resolve different issues from the academia institutions. So in this course, as I have already said, that it has highlighted as part of the week. So after going through the conceptual part, human rights duties and responsibilities of business enterprises as third party, so which is very necessary to be discussed, because it has come lots of discussions and of course that a kind of debate on it, and also the necessary to intervene in the relevant areas of the interventions for business and human rights, because there are many sectors where it has to be addressed, particularly by in the perspective of the business growth, as well as the protections, promotions, and also the remedial measures for the human rights scenario. So in this context, it need to be addressed with the environment and the business conduct, with relations to the child rights, and also the conduct and gender economic migrant workers, as well as the human rights in high risk and conflict affected areas, similar in the indigenous with relations to the indigenous peoples, and also labors and workplace safety. So there are large sectors where there's the intervention is needed. So institutional interventions, policy interventions are dealing by the concerned stakeholders. But before reaching up to that, what our mission is to develop the key human resource for supporting to them within the institutional mechanism, as just now our Madam Nisa Bania, with the due experience of that, she's working very nicely in the labor code, what we can expect in upcoming days. So with that concerned, academia is working on that, and also going through the legal strategies for the perspectives and regulations and the selected measures. So in this context also, we'll discuss on certain weeks, and also for the complicity and accountability. That is also very important for discussing on that part, what the key complications, how it can be addressed and make the accountable to those concerned institutions. In this way, for the 12 weeks we have developed, as the time is limited, so I don't want to go in detail about it. So for 12 weeks we have developed this course, and as a pilot project we have introduced among the faculty's members. So it is a very good result has been come, and we are planning for developing it as a credit course, as a special course in the master's level in the upcoming days. This is what I can say. And the second issues which was assigned to me with regard to the academic role for the probe of the migrant issues and others. There I don't want to go in detail, but only I want to highlight only on the two major details. That is, one, with going through the background of that economic migrant scenario, just I want to give the legal status on that context. Our country has that 100 train labor destinations country, but that people are migrating in the 172, and in between the 172 and 110 there are 62 countries comes the differences. So on what legal ground they are going over it is the matter of thinking concern need to be think by the concerned institutions. And we have only the agreement with the 2 states, as already NHRC's representative and others have already said with us, and only with the 5 states we have the MOU. In this scenario, every day Nepalese people are migrating. What is the cause behind it? Maybe of there is no the direct interventions, initiations, the academic research are lacking behind, so having these problems. So for resolving these issues, it is necessary to focus what we have come through the that class discussions and the seminars and others discussions forum. Always we think on that is still it is needed to focus on maintaining international standards on the legally enforceable treaties and non-binding declarations, as well as agreement and the documents. And the second one is that the Nepal country as herself need to be alert in time. It's a very high peak time to us with evaluating ourselves, as I have already given the scenario on this context. So we need to think on the in the 3 phases, not only at the when they return back or at the during the their duty stations, even at the while leaving the country. In that context, if they need the technical assistance and for enhancing their capacity and other factors necessary to support by this. So in this scenario that we need to work very hard. So by saying so, thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you for wonderful presentation, and you have highlighted a lot of good thing in it, and more importantly, the link between SDG and BHR. Likewise, CSR, vis-a-vis, human rights approach. So with that, now we have Saroj Ghimireji has been working actively in the area of human rights, rule of law. He is one of the litigant, strategic litigants as well. You have 2 areas, Sarojji. One is about emerging issue challenges in pushing business human rights agenda in Nepal, and second one is the role of lawyers and justice sector actors in response to this issue. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sarojji. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Sarojji, yeah.
Thank you, Taxi. Well, I'm happy that Ravi Surya Deva is here, because I think that I started my advocacy of business and human rights after reading the articles of the Surya Deva back to the year 2007, when I was doing my LLM dissertations in London. So after commencing 2 LLM in commercial law and the constitutional law, I thought that the human rights issue is much important for the corporate lawyers. So at the initial stage, it was difficult in Nepal even to advocacy for the human rights issues being a corporate lawyer, because the human rights lawyers, they were itself have were reserved that if the human rights issues comes to the scope of the corporate lawyer or not. And this issues has now become a paramount for all, and even for the government sectors. So I'm happy that this has become one of the major agenda in Nepalese context. Well, so that's what I was saying, that the general perception of human rights that was understood as to be in the province of the state has been changed now. Now, definitely, the corporations or the individuals even comes under the purview of the human rights protections. In recent years, we have witnessed the various issues of human rights violations from the business activities. And in this background, the UN guiding principles has recognizes that the business enterprises may be involved with adverse human rights impact through their own activities. So they do have in their business relationship. So they do have their human rights responsibilities. So, but the human rights violation issues differs from based on the jurisdictional nature or their industrial patterns. And based on my good practices, the corporate advisory functions that I advise to the corporate entrepreneurs, the academic performance that I being a faculty in the university and conducting discussions with experts and academicians, even with the entrepreneurs. And last time, recently, preparing a report on the emerging issues of business and human rights for the UNRC Office of Nepal. I'd like to mention a few things that the TechG has asked me to mention here in. I'll be very briefly pointing out that one, but there are a few important issues apart from the common issues that we have been discussing, limiting on the labor issues, the environment issues, and the migration issues. In my study and in my practice, I have come to a few important issues that is not given much emphasis when we talk about the business and human rights, even in our context. The issues that came with it was the privacy and data protection of the employees from transferring the extraterritorial jurisdictions. So this is one of the important issues that I would like to relate with the human rights when the employees, the data are transferred across the national borders. The issues of the consumer safety against the products, and then the issues of the false and deceptive advertisements, and the liabilities that may arise from there on the trust liabilities. And on that part, the right to redress is one of the important things that we have to link with the business kind of thing. The forceful acquisition, evictions of property, and we call it the taking away clause, and without any adequate compensation is one of the emerging issues that we have noted here. The forceful use of employees in mines and excavations. I think that issue came, that employees are used in the mines and excavations without the protective measures, and even the Justice Nisha, she was mentioning about the human rights issues in supply chains, especially in case of the large companies when their goods reach consumers. The exploitations of migrant workers, especially for the Indian workers in Nepal or Nepalese workers in abroad, is one of the important issues that we have been discussing. And the another important issues that I noted is the rights of the person with the disability in respect of their access to business services. This is one of the pertinent issues that I would like to cite here. On business part, on governance part, this shareholders appraisal rights is one of the very important part that is linked with the right to property, and the hostility of minority investors in the business decision-making process is one of the important issues that we noted into this one. And protection of proprietary rights of intellectuality. And the another very important issues is of the transactional cost, which is linked with the corruption and bribery that has led to the jeopardy of the proprietary rights of the individuals because the business entities are involved in committing the bribery and the corruptions, which led to the detriment of the customers' proprietary rights. During COVID, I think Texi wants me to talk something on COVID also. In COVID time, we had a much another important issues that we surfaced in our jurisdictions, which includes the right to medical facilities and the medical facilities of the victims in the private hospitals, the salaries and the benefits during the close down lockdown of the corporate entities, the unfair retrenchment and the unfair closure of the enterprises, because some enterprises took the opportunity of lockdowns to close their enterprises. That is one of the important issues that we put in. The consumers' health and safety and the abuse of the safety protocols by the business entities in the business premises was one of the important issues that we linked with the business and human rights. And the second part that asked me about the judicial response, the Supreme Court has demonstrated its excellent performance when the human rights issues comes, no matter whether that is under jeopardy by the government or the business entities. The Supreme Court has given a remarkable cases, judgments when the matter comes to the clean environment, labor, the acquisitions, and even the taxation, especially the capital gain taxations on the offshore deals, that the Supreme Court has taken the best of interest of the people and brought the business entities into the scope of law. During the pandemic, the Supreme Court has also played a very important role when, if I cite some of the important issues on related to the business and human rights, around more than 30 PIL cases were filed in the Supreme Court in respect of human rights, and some of were related to the business also. I myself was the petitioner in two important PIL cases. In one of the PIL cases, the Supreme Court has pronounced the landmark judgment. Among many issues, the few issues that I would just like to cite is the access to health. The Supreme Court, by its interim orders and the mandamus, it ensures that the responsibility is not only of the government hospitals, rather the private sectors, private business entities do have equal responsibility to give equal the medical treatments to the COVID victims. That is one of the important things that Supreme Court has said. The free availability.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just coming to the conclusion. And so the compulsory use of the health and safety protocols at the premises, the securing the job of the employees and especially those who are returned from the as migrant workers, right to privacy, and the importantly, the extending the scope of law of limitations, considering that the lockdown is a 0 period, with some of the remarkable cases that Supreme Court has directly or indirectly ensured that the business entities do have the human rights responsibilities. I think, Tegzi, I would like to conclude.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Saroji, highlighting all the kind of systematic issues in relation to business human rights, and more importantly, judicial response in the protection and promotion as well as respect of the business human rights issue. So with that, I would like to thank you all the members of panel and the speaker in particular, Surya, for his wonderful remark. And now let me inform you that we'll have group discussion, and the questions will be shared in the screen for all the groups. And for the groups, we have allocated 30 minutes, so we have to come back accordingly. So thank you very much once again. Yeah. So Kabbeji, could you please share the questions for the groups?
Sure. So we are soon moving to breakout rooms, the breakout portion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You'll be randomly assigned to a room and we'll move you into the rooms now. If you need any support for breakout rooms, please call the host into the room or return back to the main room. You have the ability to move rooms. The questions are provided in the breakout rooms. Participants will now be able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
give a beautiful representation of the scenario right now, stating that the informal sector is the sector where a large portion of our Nepalese labor force is inclusive of. Now, if the government is not providing enough opportunities for them, then the second resort would be to go abroad, and which is the case that we are facing right now. And going abroad, not being able to assess the situation, we see the side of the government being reluctant, as well as the people themselves not being aware of the accessible facilities and opportunities, and also unaware about the laws, are being unable to come under the scope of human rights or to guarantee or ensure their human rights that they possess. So the major problems were addressed right here. And second one was the drivers or the obstacles was the reluctance of government system, and also the people's inability to know the laws itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Sijan. Can I ask Ria?
Firstly, I would like to thank my people who were there in the breakout sessions. I would like to thank them for bringing their expertise and their experience around the discussion and engaging in such fruitful, constructive, and open exchange. But we only got to discuss about the first question only. So without delay, I would like to present the key takeaways of the discussion session, which is basically around 4 points. The first point that we discussed about regarding the pressing issues in regarding the business and human rights in Nepal, that is the lack of effective implementation of the regulatory mechanisms related to business and human rights by the state. And the second point is the reluctance of the state mechanism to provide technical assistance to business enterprises to incorporate the human rights standards. And the third thing that we discussed was about the failure to effectively investigate the ongoing cases by the state authorities. And the another major issue that we discussed is about the collision of the provisions of the regulatory laws. And these are the 4 major issues that we got to discuss about the in the short time of 10 minutes. But however, we concluded that the Nepal's way forward should be basically inclined in consolidating the 3 major pillars that we discussed all day regarding the state's duty to protect, corporate social responsibility, to respect, and also access to remedy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can I ask Anusha?
Yes, we actually discussed all 4 of the questions. Regarding the first question, the pressing business and human rights issue that we identified was the consumer safety, how the consumers are facing problems as regards the goods, products, services, and all those issues. The second issue was right of person with disabilities, how we can be insensitive at times with the person with who are differently abled. And the third pressing issue was implementation of the existing laws, how there is no proper implementation of the laws that are already there addressing the concerns of business and human rights. The first is the concern of minority shareholders in the business entities, how the minority shareholders are not taken into consideration and how their concerns are not addressed properly. The fourth one was environment issue, how the business entities are not are not thinking about the environment when they conduct their business services and activities. The next one is gender inequality. We have laws and we have international and national laws that address the issues concerning gender inequality, but still the issue of gender inequality prevails in our country and business arena. Regarding the second question, the key drivers that the key obstacle and drivers that needs to be addressed, we found 4 major issues. First one is problems in policy, that is lack of clear policies. The policies that are existing are not clear enough, or the policies are not adequate enough to address the business and human rights issues that are existing in the country. The second is corruption and bribery in the institutions and government as well as non-governmental organizations. The fourth is administrative inefficiency. Even if there is the mechanisms to address the issues, the administrative inefficiency leads to the business and human rights issue being unaddressed. The fourth one is lack of sensitivity in part of the employers, how the employers can be insensitive towards their employees and how they are not very receptive towards the complaints and the issues that the employees may have. As regards the third question, the recommendation, we found 6 main recommendations. The first is amendment and formulation of new laws and policies that can address human rights and business issues. The second one is to regulate the informal sectors that are not covered under the ambit of law. The third is implementation of the existing laws. Fourth one is provision for adequate compensation to the victims of the human rights abuses. And the next is meaningful execution of governmental commitments. Our government has made several commitments as regards protection and promotion of human rights, but what lacks is the execution of those commitments. So the meaningful execution is necessary to address business and human rights issues. As regards the key stakeholders that in our country that can partake in promotion of business and human rights are first one being NHRC, second is judiciary, third Nepal Trade Union, fourth Employers Association, and the most prominent issue was the stakeholder is Nepal Bar Association, how the legal advisors working in the company can advise their the business entities that they are advising to take due consideration of human rights during the execution of their business activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Anusha. Sudeep.
Thank you. So our team was able to discuss on the very first two questions. I will be highlighting, I will be pointing out our key take in 5 different points, like the first one being awareness, people, whether it be consumer or the employer or employee, they are not well aware about the practices of business and human rights, about the concerns of human rights in business practices. And the second one being no internalization or realization of human rights principles and values, like the business house and the corporate sector are not realizing that that certain human rights principles and values are there, and they must be respected. The third point being no proper implementation of laws relating to human rights in business sector. There are in fact there are laws that respects human rights of the employees or consumers in Nepal, but the private sector are not yet found to have respected the practices of human right in business sector. The labor law of Nepal has set out the has guaranteed 98 days of maternity leave, but of paid maternity leave, but the business sector are not but the private business sector are not respecting the labor law of Nepal. And the fourth one being not sensitive to worker or consumer. The human right practices must in business sector must respect the human right of both worker as well as the consumer, but they are not respecting both the human rights of worker, whether it be if they are relying they are relying in the labor law or not, and the consumer, the quality of the product, the price of the product, etc. And these includes not only in production sector, but also in service sector as well. So these are the prime issues of business and human right practices in Nepal, and they need to be addressed. And the first and foremost thing that needs to be enhanced is the awareness of the human right principles in business practices to both the business corporate sector employee, worker, as well as the consumer. Thank you.
Binda.
Thank you, Ravi sir. Till now, we have completed with question number 1 concerning the identification of the most pressing issues of human rights in Nepal. So we have identified 4 major issues, for which first and very utmost necessary necessary issues to address is development and human rights, meaning that we have conducted a lot of development projects and all sorts of development issues without considering the proper compensation and without having the concrete procedure for giving the compensation to the people. And then second issue is gender discrimination, that is meaning to intersectionality of indigenous and marginalized people, meaning that the marginalized people and vulnerable people with the least advantaged people are yet not within the periphery of the protected people, though they are protected in the law, in the legislative framework. However, in practice, we could see many more loopholes in its proper implications. And third point is the occupational health and safety in the working place, that is the safety measures, the safety measures concerning the best health interest of the labor has not been implemented properly. And the last point we have come to the conclusion is like environment pollution. The most of the business entities and most of the business corporation have been seen like they are not being in compliance to the polluter pays principles, which cause, because of their business operations and industrial operations, that they cause many more environment pollution outside, for which they are not being liable. So we have concluded 4 points with the question number 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Binda. I think this concludes the presentation on as per the group discussions. Now, before I start with the closing and summarizing as to what we have discussed today, I request everybody to just switch on their cameras for a group photograph, and just stay with us for 5 minutes, 2 minutes for a group photograph. That would be very, very helpful. Okay, as you do, I would start with the closing as well, because Take is not there. Now we need to understand that that there is neither a distinct or a mandatory legal obligation for businesses to follow as in Nepal as regards the human rights, and therefore the concerns of business and human rights can also rely upon the legislative mechanisms to address human rights violations. The state of Nepal needs therefore to regulate and register foreign companies. And the key issues which we could look from the discussions today was the issue of gender inequality, which needs to be addressed sincerely. Then reluctance to provide technical assistance to incorporate human rights standards. Then displacement of people where the marginalized people falter behind. Then lack of social security and usually informal basically in informal sectors. Minority shareholders interests have to be taken into consideration. And then it all needs to be consolidated, and the three pillars together have to be used to find out solutions together. Now, my understanding from the research which we began and we came up with the book is that the existing legal framework of business and human rights in Nepal, in terms we have the laws in Nepal, and there's also a sufficient interest in the government and the machineries in the country. But what is lacking is the implementation of some of those laws, and also dissemination of information, and getting people aware of their rights and what best they can do. So I would like to close with this, that it is important for Nepal to start discussing on a small scale level, and slowly begin and grow towards establishing a national action plan on business and human rights. Now, everybody says that national action plan on business and human rights is the final way to address this issue. But I believe what is more important is also having a discourse on the issue, and also starting to work around the issue, and talking about the issue in academia, at policy levels, at government level, at the non-governmental organizations level, and the national human rights institutions level. And if we start talking about it and addressing the implementation issue of laws, I think we would go towards a national action plan which would help us on a larger scale. And I would, in the end, I would like to thank the UNDP regional office, UNDP Nepal, Livio, Professor Surya, Professor Harpreet, Professor Yuvraj, Take, and everybody who has been involved and spoken today from on behalf of the government, and everybody else who has stayed for last 2 hours with us, for joining in and supporting us in making this panel and session successful. Thank you so much.